Welcome to the Real Life Moms podcast, where we put ourselves at the top of our to-do list. I'm Lisa Foster, your host, and today I'm here with fellow mom and creator, author, and workshop facilitator, Kristan Swan, and she is here to help us come home to ourselves. Hi, welcome to the show.
Oh, Lisa, thank you so much. I am delighted to be here and I love what you do. And thank you for this space. And I am in complete agreement. We need to put ourselves at the top of the to-do list. So
Mm,
hard, though.
so hard. It sounds easy. It's a very easy
Oh,
sentence, but hard to
yes,
do.
yes,
We have to keep reminding
yeah,
ourselves. Yes.
yes.
I feel like parenting's a bit of a roller coaster, right? You go on this ride, it's lots of twists and turns you've never expected. And as your kids grow up and even transition out, you're like, get off the ride and you're like, okay, now what? Who am I? Where am I? What happened? I lost myself a bit. And I know this is something that you do help people with. You help people return to themselves, if you will. So maybe tell us a little bit about your approach.
Yeah, for sure. I do think parenting for myself, it was the one thing I was sure about, right? I knew that I wanted to be a parent and I didn't really know what my career direction was. But I knew that. And also, the other thing is, other than knowing that being a parent was so important to me, I didn't really know a lot about myself. So much as it is with many of us, so much of the work that I do today is really a reflection of the journey I had to go on to get to know myself and then actually trust myself and make choices based on that knowing and that trusting. But there's a lot of, I talk about, and this, I was talking about this before the attention economy, right? And there just was so much noise telling us who we were supposed to be, how we were supposed to show up, how we were, as women in particular, how you're supposed to look, how you're supposed to parent, right? And some of that information is absolutely valid and information that you want to pay attention to. And I keep coming back to this idea that we have shut ourselves off to a certain degree, that where we maybe give that outside noise a little bit more of our time or our focus than really that inner wisdom that we have.
Yeah, 100%. It's so easy to get pulled in the surrounding noise, especially as a parent. There's a lot of surrounding noises in your own home. But but yes,
Yeah, and we haven't, as parents, even though I didn't grow up with siblings, so I didn't have little brothers or sisters that I was taking care of, but I had done a lot of babysitting and I did a lot of that. But you can babysit for years, which I did, and becoming a parent is completely different,
yeah.
right? As and so there's, I think that if anything, it is, you can read about it, you can study as much as you want, and it is something that really until you learn by doing, which is a little terrifying because you're thinking, I have these individuals that I am meant to shepherd into adulthood. And so it's, I think just by the nature of kind of the big job of parenting, it can be very easy to doubt ourselves
Yeah.
or question ourselves.
Yeah. And that brings me to the two things you really pointed out, which was knowing yourself and then trusting yourself.
Yeah.
Those are huge because I think there's a lot of like mental, like, not sure about who I am really. And then when you get to knowing yourself better, really trusting your instinct, your intuition on things. So, yeah, what's your super strategy to figure out those things?
I think for the start, the place to start really is curiosity.
Hmm.
And so I like to encourage a curious mindset with myself right? And with others. And I think the important piece specifically around curiosity is that maybe the synonym that I would use would be open-minded. So there's really this, you're removing judgment in its place you're saying I'm open here, and you're asking questions, and again, this expansiveness. So you start with curiosity. And for me, really, what has been the most meaningful is a prompted journal practice. And what I do is I do it in the morning because it helps set the tone for my day. And I like to do it, if possible, before I start talking or interacting too much, and allowing myself to ease into the day. Sometimes that is just not possible. So it's not about doing it perfectly. However, I like to journal about the day before, and I do it in such a way that I'm really just talking, writing, and I do believe specifically in using a pen and paper. I think that there's
Mhm.
something really grounding in that pen to paper. I do a lot of writing on the computer, so I'm not saying that I don't use computers, but for the journaling practice in particular, it's a way to focus, I think, in a way that is specific and get that grounding or that quietness. So that you're reflecting on for me, I'll reflect on the day before. And I'm really thinking about it just in terms of what happened during the day. And then what I do is I think about the day more in specifics. So I think about, gosh, what were those moments of the day that were, the way I phrase it is my big yeses, right? And it doesn't necessarily mean that they are big moments. It's just those moments where I found myself feeling really engaged or excited, or maybe they're just really sweet moments, right? A conversation with an old friend, or if you're a stranger, right? So noticing those bright spots, right?
Mhm.
And because there's good information in there, right? What lights you up, so to
Yeah.
speak. And then the other thing that I like to do is I like to check in with kind of those places of the day where it's, yeah, the way that I call it in my journal is not so much. And basically I say it like that because, again, I don't think I need to. It's interesting because I grew up spending a lot of time with my grandparents. They were just a really important presence in my life. And my one grandmother, very bright woman, only was able to finish high school, worked. She was a housekeeper, cook. At the beginning of her career, she worked in a mill. She grew up in a small town on the East Coast, and so the mill was the main employer. And she's really funny, a little bit of a little dark sense of humor, which I guess as a kid I was a little bit fascinated with. And I know that she loved me, just she would have done anything for me. And she had this really interesting behavior where if she wanted to do something, it wasn't enough for her to say, for instance, let's say on her day off, that she wanted, maybe she wanted to go and sit in the park, right, and read a book. But she never could just say, hey, I want to go read a book and sit in a park. She would have to say, she'd have to make all the other choices bad,
Hmm.
right? So that it somehow justified her choice, right? There was always this need to justify her choice rather than just saying, this is what I want to do. Like, I'm not hurting anyone else. But there was something I think so scary about just owning what she just really wanted to do. And so I think for many years, I think I inherited that behavior in a way, right? And so there was, and especially as a young mom, gosh, if you are saying that you want to claim a little space for yourself, there's a whole lot of ways that you end up getting a message that, you know, or at least I did, oh, you've got to think twice about that. That feels selfish, or
Mhm.
What are you doing there? And so in my journal, what I realized by saying the not so much kind of category is I don't have to make anything bad. I just need to pay attention to that which does not work for me. And really what I'm also saying, because I'm doing this journaling as a daily practice, is that it's not working for me in this moment. And that doesn't mean that things aren't going to change, but it's not working for me in this moment. And it can be a conversation that I had where I didn't necessarily like the way I showed up in the conversation, or maybe I didn't like what the dynamic was with the other person. It can be a situation, it could be committing to doing something and then going to the thing and realizing, yeah, I'm not really sure that I need to do that again, right? But again, just giving that permission to notice those things because that's good information for us.
Yeah, I love that. I love, first of all, like basically everything you're saying. I love the curiosity of being curious, having that mindset, that open mindset, because it is true. We tend to get a bit definitely judgy about things and before they even occur. We haven't even
Yeah.
experienced them half the time, and we have all these
Right.
opinions or have heard all these opinions. And I do think
Right.
curiosity gets not enough credit. Because whenever I say to myself, like, I might be nervous about something, or I might be like trying something a little new, and maybe I am nervous about going or doing or feeling like I have to justify myself for being there, I always say to myself, just be curious. Because there's
Yeah.
no expectation then. It doesn't matter if I
Yes.
not so much liked it or it ends up
Right.
being a hell yes. There's no expectation
Yeah.
around it. So this like curiosity just feels very so calming to me when I put that out there. So I love that you said that. And I love that you also create a journal that feels, I don't know, what's the word? I just want to say nice, like less intimidating. Just saying, oh, not so much. It just feels welcoming and okay. So I just, yeah, I think that is really amazing. So I love that. I love that. I do feel that a lot of people probably do use journaling, right? But I
Mhm.
find, and even myself, we get tripped up in just like writing about our day. Or writing about just trying to get things off our chest, or maybe writing about things that are
Mhm.
like not so positive, right? We're either writing all the grateful
Right.
things just about our day or something not so positive to get it off our chest. But I like how you kind of look at the whole picture and start to recognize what we feel really does align with us and what doesn't. So I know you really look at patterns in your journals. Tell us a little bit
Mhm.
more about that because I think people do want to. I think we cycle, right? Like we there's
Oh,
something about us and we
yeah.
come back to the same place. I'm like, why am I here again? Or why, I always end up in this situation. Or so tell us about those patterns that we could actually find, or are there prompts that we should be looking at? Yeah, how do you use that with your journaling?
It's interesting because the very first moment I conceived of creating spaghetti on the wall, which is the physical journal that is this grouping of all these things I'm talking about. I was in the midst of a business coaching career. So I was coaching independent business owners. Most of them were business founders and they had started the business and they were working the business. And and so I'm listening and I get to know these people very well, and especially as independent business owners, a lot of what I would talk to them about is you started your own business. And so the beauty of that is you get to actually start a business that works for you, right? You get to pay attention to what success means to you. Don't take the definition that is out there culturally or within society. And I think this is true for every single person, right? It's worth having a conversation with yourself about what does a successful or meaningful life look like to me. And my business owners, I'd talk to them weekly or however often, and they'd come to me and we'd be having these conversations and they'd be complaining about a situation. And it occurs to me because I'm observing them and I'm not in the weeds. I'm recognizing these patterns that are happening, right? I mean, they are, and it was really interesting because I got fascinated with how we make decisions, right? That we have these patterns around our decision making habits. And I know when I talked about this with a colleague one time, I was describing it, and I was probably using much more kind of cerebral or heady terms. And she goes, "Oh, she goes, I know exactly what you're talking about." She goes, "I'm a microwave and my husband is a crock pot." And I was like, oh my gosh, I love that. She's, yeah. She goes, if we're going to go on vacation, if we're going to go buy a blender, or he's going to research the thing, he's going to, and she's, I'm just like, let's just get it. And then if it doesn't work, we'll figure it out kind of thing.
Mm,
And so it came to me, I thought, okay, I'm going to make this. I think I can take some of my personal stuff that I'm doing and I can create this journal that would be really helpful for really anyone, but in that moment, it was around my business owners so that as they're documenting things, there would be an awareness of what was happening. And so when you do this on a daily basis, you don't even actually have to do a lot of retracing and going back and reading from 6 months prior or anything. You start noticing your own stuff, right? It's when you're putting pen to paper and you're saying, oh gosh, you're not so much section, you keep having that thing where you said yes to the wrong type of client, or you said, you're like, okay, what am I doing here? Both in terms of, so it's a kind of a couple of, I introduced, I think I dumped that drawer. I always have this mental image of that drawer that we all have in the kitchen that kind of has a little bit of everything, right? The catch-all drawer. And I dumped it here on our desk. But so I'm talking about patterns. So there's those things that we do. And so some of those are tied to behaviors that we may have grown up with, we may have inherited from our family dynamic. And we bring them into whatever it is. We bring them into business, we bring them into our relationships, we bring them into parenting. Our patterns come with us.
mm,
And really, awareness is that first step.
yeah.
And I think the thing that I want to be clear about is I never, whether it was with my coaching, business coaching clients, or the people that I work with now in my workshops, I am not in the business of trying to change people. That is not my place. What I'm offering to people, whether or not they choose to engage, is maybe there's some awareness that you would like to open yourself up to and get
Hmm.
curious about,
Yeah,
right?
I'm assuming that people who like want to work with you or this spaghetti on the wall journal, which I do love the name, that there are already these people who do want to look into who they are and maybe have more awareness and probably want to take action. So I
Yeah.
what I'm hearing is that basically the process is that you journal about your day before, the day before, or you could probably do it in the evening, right? The
You know
day
what? I
of.
have some people who love to do it at the end of their day.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because the people who do it at the end of the day, they really love it because they literally do it the last thing before they turn out the light. And
Yeah.
then they have told me, they're like, I sleep so well because
Dumped
I'm
it.
not holding on to all that stuff. So the, I would say it does not, and again, the way that I designed it was specifically to be simple. So you can do it at any time of the day.
Mhm.
It's really not meant to be done. I don't journal for hours on end. I journal for 15 minutes. Maybe I've got some days where I'm just on a roll. I might, and because I do have another section in the journal that's kind of out of the box inspiration.
Mhm.
Sometimes I'll have all sorts of great ideas that I want to
Mhm.
just start capturing. But it's just do it for 15 minutes and then do it at whatever the most important thing, the way that it will be most impactful is if you can build a consistent habit.
Yeah. Like I said, so journaling whatever time it works for you about the
Yeah.
day, and then seeing what your yeses are, what your not so muches are, and seeing then really reflecting, okay, wow, this not so much area keeps maybe coming up. So that
Mm.
would trigger, oh, a pattern, maybe or maybe not. I want to do something about it. Are there some
Right.
actions at that point that you recommend for people who are starting to see maybe a pattern in their not so much, or even in a pattern in their hell yeses, like making sure there's more of those? That what's that actionable step? Because it's nice to look at it, it's nice to notice it, but nothing changes unless we do something. So now what?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that is where again the I'm thinking so I'll use an example of my from my own life. I think it was I can't remember if it was last Mother's Day or I think it was last Mother's Day. Yeah, last Mother's Day. And I have three adult children. Two of them were going to be in town, and my mom lives nearby. So my mom she really had an expectation about how she wanted the day to be. And I was pretty exhausted. It had been this just a really long week of work and some other personal stuff. And I was feeling I didn't have a whole lot to bring to Mother's Day. And I ended up going to Mother's Day and my mom's, and it didn't go well. I didn't want to be there. And I knew that beforehand, but there was that pattern that I have of not wanting to disappoint my mom and to be a people pleaser and show up even when I'm knowing that I'm feeling out of sorts. And I, yeah, so I showed up and I ended up leaving abruptly after just the day, I mean, I guess I left right after we finished eating. And because I think I had said like the 10th, not very, just snarky thing to my mom. And I got home and I ended up journaling in that moment because I just was like, oh, what is going on here? Here I am at this point in my life. Why am I, why am I doing this again? Like, why am I forcing these situations again? And in the journaling, I was able to actually recognize kind of some of the other stuff that had
Mhm.
happened during the week that I still was carrying with me. And so, on the one hand, just in the process of really taking that time to reflect, I was able to give myself a little bit of kindness. Just say, you've had a crummy week. And I basically was able to look at that and say, okay, I know I didn't show up the way I wanted to show up. So the thing that I could do in the immediate is I reached out to my mom the next day and I said, I'm sorry, I didn't show up the way, I didn't mean to ruin your Mother's Day. And I just didn't show up the way I wanted to show up. And the other thing that I made a mental note of for myself, and I have been able, even just this week, I, I was able to make a mental note of that I'm going to give myself permission to say beforehand, I'm worn out. I need to maybe not do this one. Or maybe can I take you out for lunch later in the week to schedule? And so in that moment, I couldn't necessarily fix that Mother's Day, but I could take that awareness. And like I said, even this week, I had one of these weeks where and we're getting ready to go out of town for a couple of days. So there's that added stress. And I was meant to have a friend come over for dinner, and she texted to check in and say, what time? I think I'm running a little bit later. And normally, my normal answer would be like, take your time. It doesn't matter. Just drive safe. Can't wait to see you. But it was like I took this breath and there was that little light went on and I just texted her. I said, do you mind if we do this another night? And this is somebody who is the easiest person to have over. This isn't, it was, had nothing to do with her. It was just, I needed
Yeah.
a minute.
Yeah.
And so I was able to do that. So it was in that awareness that I was able then to put into practice
Yeah.
the thing that I learned.
And so what I'm actually hearing is that going back to the very beginning, like knowing and trusting ourselves, it's almost like
Yeah.
through this journaling practice of becoming more aware of those things that we make us happy and may not so much, and then really honoring that with those different
Yeah.
situations. So it starts to come like full circle. Then you can really, oh, wow, I do know that these things are, a yes, and these things are too much. And how I'm feeling right now, I don't have more to give. And then trusting
Yes.
that because you know that and you've been working with yourself, if you will, through the journaling.
Yes.
So it's really beautiful. I love that.
Yeah. And I think that the other thing too is the way that I think about it is when we get to know ourselves, we get curious and we start taking that time to know ourselves, and then we start trusting ourselves, the kind of what ends up happening is we can do less harm, right? We can do less harm to ourselves by making choices that are more in alignment with who we are. And we can do less harm to others because we don't show up like I did, just grumpy and out of sorts at Mother's Day for
Yeah.
my mom.
And the whole ripple effect, even telling your friend that, you know what, I'm just not there today, gives her permission to do the same when she needs to do that
Yes.
for herself. So it is
Yeah.
good to see that, even though it feels hard to do. Yeah, that's great.
It does. Well, and I think that's the other thing too, is going back to this idea of trust, is really trusting that when we are making choices that are based on where we are at in the moment, that you are you're opening the door for other possibilities to enter. And I ended up talking to my friend the next day and I said, "Thank you so much." And she said, "Of course." And she said, as it turns out, it really ended up being a good thing because I ended up having some time with my brother who was going through a moment and he really needed me. She said, it worked out to be the right thing for that
Mhm.
night. And I can't tell you how many times that I've had those kinds of conversations, either from my side where, a friend has been, we've been able to be honest enough with each other. Oh, can we reschedule or can we shift this around or something? And it's like this whole other outcome, going back to that curiosity and that lack of expectation and kind of this openness to other possibilities that can be equally or even more wonderful.
I feel like it always does. It always does, especially when you're
Mm.
honest. I think when you've tried to
Yes.
try to be like, I can't go because I don't when my car broke down or whatever, when
Right.
you like start
Right.
making stuff up, then it doesn't. But if you
Yes.
are honest, I do. Something always more beautiful. Something happens that it was like meant to be.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. You bring up a really
Because
good
we've
point.
all
Yeah.
been
Because
there, right?
yeah.
When we try to get out of something. Always.
Oh my gosh. Yes. We have all been there. It's hard to do that with your kids around. They keep you honest.
Yeah. True.
They're
That
like,
is so
I
true.
I heard you say that, and I know you're not. Your car is just fine,
Yeah,
and you're
you're
like,
not
oh,
sick, Mom.
that's
You're
right.
fine. You're just fine. Can I be sick and not go to school tomorrow? Yeah, that doesn't pan out ever well.
Right.
Yeah, so it's great.
Oh,
Yeah, so be honest is what we're saying to yourself and to
yes.
others.
Yes.
Now, what can the listeners start doing today after listening to this podcast?
I would say I talk a lot and I think about that we always have a choice, right? In every moment, we have a choice. And And a lot of times we may not like our choices, but we always have a choice, right? And so I would say, just even in this moment, as you are going through the rest of your day today, it's think about as you're making choices, is this really is this really in alignment with who I am or who I want to be, where I want to be headed? And so it can be as simple as paying attention to that in yourself. It also can be, certainly journaling is a great practice and I recommend it for everyone. And you can take 5 minutes just to say the start of the journal before I start journaling in about the day before for me is the top thought. And like I said, I do it when I first wake up or thereabouts. And it's, what was the thing that I woke up thinking about today?
Mm.
And sometimes it's stuff that I've got to do. So I need to think about that in terms of making sure that I don't get a little bit too tightly wound during the day. So you could even just kind of start by naming that thing that's on your mind, right? In those first moments of waking up.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Now tell us a little bit more about the Spaghetti on the Wall journal and what you offer, where people can find it, find you.
The title is actually Spaghetti on the Wall because my mom was not she is not a great cook. And she knows this. She knows this. Mom, I love you, but you're not a great cook. We would have friends who loved to cook and would come over and cook for us. And my mom was always very happy when that happened. And we were too, because it was delicious. And one of our friends would make spaghetti and meatballs because that was my grandmother's favorite meal. And it was always this big production. And there would be the tossing of the spaghetti noodles up to the ceiling. And of course, if they stick, then they're done. And if they don't, then they need a little bit more time. So it's that whole idea of just put it all out there, and over time you'll see what sticks, whether it's ideas that you have or those yeses, or noticing those patterns and some awareness around changes that you can make. So I have the journal, it's for sale on my website. And I also do journaling classes, and I have a women's class called Circle of Connection. So that's
Mm.
has a slightly different curriculum, but it still is really that deepening that connection to yourself, especially in this noisy world. And also, I think, especially for women, just finding yourself in these different chapters of your life, right? And that there can be these moments where we can feel less connected to ourselves or less connected to community, even. So I do a circle of connection. And then my other program that I do is called Discovering Your Spiritual Autobiography. And that is a non denominational workshop that's really just for people who are ready to think about that which is bigger than themselves, right? It's not your relationship to the world or the universe or whatever the language is that you use for you.
That's so cool. Thank you so much for coming on the show, talking to us, and just getting us started. I feel like this is so simple to actually even just start doing. It
Yes.
doesn't actually take a lot, probably just 10 minutes. So I appreciate all of that you're doing. And yeah, thanks for sharing it with us today.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you for this opportunity to share yes, I will reiterate that it is very simple, and self-discovery is not selfish. We need to remember that.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you are interested in getting that journal, Spaghetti on the Wall, or just anything that Kristan has to offer, just click on the link in the show notes. And until next week, keep carving out time for yourself and keep putting yourself on top of your to do list.